Hey everybody, Jeff Todd here for MLB Trade Rumors. We may or may not have a 2020 baseball season. We don't yet know. But there will be a free agent class at the end of the year regardless. We've been running through those players on the MLBTradeRumors.com website, and we're going to break them down a little bit more here, starting with the shortstops. Now, if you do have a second to run down below and click that subscribe button, we would dearly appreciate it. Love to keep you around checking out all of our videos because we have a lot already done and many more planned. There's no question where we're going to start at the top of this class of shortstops. And there's not a lot of big names in this class, but the number one name for sure, Marcus Semien of the Athletics. Now, we're talking about a guy who had been a pretty solid performer for several years. Good defender, slightly below average, pretty much an average type of an overall hitter. A guy that had had some inconsistencies, but ended up being a pretty solid player for the A's. That's great and all. And then last year just completely suddenly turned into like a top level superstar. We're talking about a guy that was putting up, 8-9 wins above replacement, depending on what metric you want to use for that. That's like super elite superstar territory. You can't just fake your way to those numbers. So what's going on there? Well, not only did he have a nice outburst in the power department and hit for average, but really more importantly, and I think for his free agent status, the most important thing he did was he suddenly started walking a ton more and drew down the strikeouts at the same time, to the point where at least last year he was sort of like an elite plate discipline type of a player, walked nearly as often as he struck out. And you're talking about now a guy that is a complete package on offense if he can keep that going. Also a high quality defender and base runner. So that is a really valuable package when put together. We're obviously also talking about a guy who hasn't done that for a long period of time, but I do think teams will be inclined to buy into that skill set given the way that it all showed at the same time in 2019. This is a guy that could be a $100 million plus type of player. Now, the next guy on the list to talk about is also that kind of player, at least when he's kind of playing at his best, and he wasn't last year. And I'm talking about Andrelton Simmons. This is arguably one of the very, very best defensive players in baseball history. We're talking about a guy who's actually still stands out very unique in today's game. And I think it's pretty important for understanding his potential value that we look at the way the game has developed. Infield shifting has allowed teams to put some marginal defensive players into the infield to get their bats in the lineup. Well, that strategy works out well enough, but it's not going to necessarily give you a top-end defense. What if you do that while also having a complete vacuum in Andrelton Simmons on the left side of the infield? Now you're starting to look at a situation where you can comfortably fit some big offensive production into your infield because you've got this historically good vacuum with a bazooka arm over there in Simmons. Now, the question here is going to be health to some degree. The guy bounces back from injuries like nobody's ever seen, but he still has had quite a few. And then didn't have an inspiring campaign last year, again coming back, working through injury. But the two prior seasons was an above average hitter. I mean, we're not talking about a guy that I think is ever going to be a breakout superstar with the bat, but he does have a history of overall producing in range of league average. And if you still consider him a super unparalleled elite defender, which I think many teams will, this is a guy that in theory could be pushing into the 9-figure range with a monster 2020 season. I think it's more likely he's going to be shy of that, but I think he could be a surprising guy on this free agent market. All right, next on the list is a guy who I think would really be hurt by a lost 2020 season, and that's Didi Gregorius. Now, he signed a $14 million one-year deal with the Phillies in hopes of bouncing back from that rough 2019 season. Remember, he was coming back from Tommy John surgery, so it's understandable. At the same time, he signed that deal looking for that 1-year bounce. He probably could have gotten multiple years had he gone looking for it. But the whole premise was to return to what he had shown, especially in 2018, big power, and had really gotten, like we just talked about, the plate discipline numbers in line, where he was about a 20% above league average hitter in 2018. And last year was just a complete and total struggle. The on-base percentage was under 300. Still had pretty good pop, but the problem with Gregorius is we're looking at a guy that needed to show a rebound in certain skills, I think. And the reason I say that is if you look at StatCast, which is MLB's camera in the sky that measures all the statistics, all the things moving around during a game, it really, really did not like Gregorius last year especially, and hasn't loved him all that much in the past. It looks at the exit velocity, the launch angle, and all the other characteristics of the ball coming off the bat. Hates Gregorius' batted ball profile, thinks that he was not that unlucky last year, even though he had a very low batting average on balls in play, and it thinks he was pretty fortunate in 2017 and 2018. And the StatCast outs above average metric, that's the what their sabermetric folks have used to analyze defense, apparently is pretty good at analyzing infielders, and it really, really disliked Gregorius in 2019, had him as a very firm negative. So this is a guy that I think really needs to play in 2020 to show something, to get back on the map there. Otherwise, we're looking at a similar situation to what he experienced this past winter. I do think Gregorius could be the type of guy to be in the 3 to 4 year deal, maybe into the $60-70 million range if he could repeat that 2018 season. All right, now our list of shortstops just falls off of a cliff from there. Not to say there aren't some established guys on there. There definitely are. But we're looking at very different types of players from this point down, in my opinion. Freddie Galvis is a guy who's played a ton. He's been a regular, super durable, probably best served as a utility guy or a timeshare guy. And you could say the same for Jose Iglesias, another magician with the glove, who actually had a very nice offensive season last year for him, but is never going to be an impact hitter and probably more of a second division regular or a reserve type of a guy. Adeiny Echeverria, Ahira Adrianza, these guys are in that same boat. And then there are some utility type guys like Eric Sogard, who has moved around throughout his career, and teams aren't signing that type of player to be a regular at one position. May happen if they have to, but that is a utility type infielder. So that's where we're going to cut it off here. But I think this list goes to show just how impactful this top group of shortstops could be. In each case, guys that really would benefit, I think, from getting out there and playing in 2020 and showing teams where they're at. The list for the next offseason, which we're going to be covering soon on the website, has some even more exciting shortstops. So a lot of change happening at the shortstop position in the majors. Appreciate you tuning into this video. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please let me know in the comments what I missed, and I'm sure I missed something. We'll do it again soon.